In this video, I'm going to show you how I configure the Sony A6700 for my style of landscape photography. Welcome back to the channel. What I'm going to do in this video is show you how I configure the Sony A6700 for my style of landscape photography. In this video, we're just going to talk about the photo options. We're not going to talk about video, although I may touch on a few of the video settings while we're setting up the camera. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you what the back of my camera looks like currently. So this is what the back of my camera looks like at this point. And I'm using memory location number 1. And if you don't know about memory locations, I would suggest you find out about those. There are 3 options available: memory location 1, 2, and 3. And there's a few others, but I only use 1, 2, and 3. Back on my Nikon shooting, they call them user settings 1, user settings 2, user settings 3. Same thing. I'm going to save my landscape settings into memory location number 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to set up my base settings, which would be my shutter speed, my aperture, and my ISO. And we're going to get the focusing dialed in and the white balance and all those things first. And then we're going to save those to a memory location, and that's where we're going to start from with the configuration. So what I'm going to do is hit the menu button now, and it's going to bring up the main menu. And the first thing we're going to change, first thing we're going to do is put your camera dial into M for manual. Okay, when I do landscape photography, I shoot manual. So if you want to do it that way, put it into manual. If you're wanting to do aperture priority or shutter priority, then either put it into A or S. But my camera is right now is set to M. And the first thing I'm going to do is hit the right selector button, go over to main, and then I'm going to go to the shutter speed. So my base shutter speed is ½ a second. That means when I turn the camera on in memory position number 1, and we're only talking about memory position number 1 tonight, I won't mention that again, the base shutter is going to be ½ a second. My aperture is f11. I find that that's normally the sharpest point of any lens. And then my ISO will be 100, okay? And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a few more changes in this menu. I'm going to go to File Format, and I'm going to change that to RAW, okay? It comes in as JPEG, but you would you would want to change that to RAW. I use Lightroom and Photoshop to edit my photographs, so that's what I want to shoot at. The RAW file type will be compressed, okay? If it was lossless compressed, it would have a box around it. But if you want to select compressed. My JPEG quality, which I'll just go ahead and change it now since I'm here, it comes from the factory set for fine. I'm going to make it extra fine, which is the highest quality. And then I'm going to change the JPEG image size to large, which is 27 megabytes. My shooting aspect ratio is 3:2. I'm using memory location number 1. And my drive mode is single shooting, okay? That's the only one I'm going to use tonight to show you. I can't turn the flash off in this mode, but I won't be attaching a flash. Well, maybe I can. No, see, I get this error message right here. So I'm just going to go with auto flash. I can't do that either. Let's see. Slow sync. It doesn't really matter because I'm not using a flash in my landscape photography. And then I'm going to come over to change this thing right here, which is your white balance. And I'm going to make it cloudy. Most of my landscape photography is shot on cloudy. And then I want to make my focus mode single shot autofocus. And my focus area will be spot small, okay? That's the one I'm going to use for landscape photography. And you've got other options here. There's center fixed, zone, wide, but I go down here and I use spot and excuse me, it's set for small. So those are the basic settings that you find in the main menu. Okay, I'm going to hit the left selector key and go back. And all these are available on the back of the camera if you've got touch operations enabled. But now I'm going to show you a few more settings that we need to change to make things a little bit better for us. So we're back to the main menu, and what we're going to do is go down to the camera icon, which is shooting. We're going to go right selector button to get to image quality. And these are all the same settings we just had in the main menu, except there's a few more in here. So we're going to scroll on down to file format for video, and we're going to select that. And I'm going to select the middle one, which is HD 1080p. I'm a 1080p kind of guy. I don't do 4K video. Nothing I have is that important to do 4K video, and I think 1080p does just a fine job. I'm going to hit the menu button to go back, and we're going to go down to movie settings, and you can change the frame rate, which I've got set for 60p, 60 frames per second. You've got options here for 30, 24, 120. I do 60 frames per second when I shoot video, then I downsize it to 30 frames per second in my post-processing software. On this one here, select the highest one, the 50 megabit, 422 10-bit. That's the highest quality. Hit menu to go back. The next option I want to change is long exposure noise reduction. I'm going to turn that off. For landscape photography, I do not use this. This would probably be best suited for Milky Way type of photography and night shots like that, but I don't have any use for it in my landscape photography. High ISO noise reduction, we're going to turn that off. Okay, we're not shooting high ISO. I've got my ISO set for 100, so we don't need that. We're going to go down to color space and make sure that is set for sRGB. Okay, all my color space on my computers and my Nikon cameras is all sRGB. Most people that I send my images off to get printed, the commercial houses, they all use sRGB. And that's about all we're going to change in the shooting and image quality menu. So now one setting that we need to change that's not under the shooting menu is down under the autofocus. And we're going to go down to that area right there, which is the purple box. We're going to hit the right selector button. Now I am a back button focus shooter. I don't use the focus on I don't have my focus coupled to my shutter button. I have it decoupled. And to do that in a Sony A6700, you have to go into the autofocus manual focus menu. You go to number 1, you hit the right selector and go down to the bottom here where it says autofocus with shutter. You want to turn that off if you're a back button focus person. And I am, so mine's turned off. While we're here, we're going to check on the focus mode at the top, and it's set for single shot autofocus, which we set up earlier in the main menu. I'm going to set my priority set for AFS at autofocus. In other words, it will not take a picture unless I'm in focus when I hit the focus button. Priority set for autofocus continuous. I always set mine for release. And that's sometimes I just do that when I'm doing wildlife photography and what have you. I don't normally shoot autofocus continuous in landscape photography. And that's it for this menu, and we're going to hit the left selector button and come back to the focus menu, and then we're going to go down to peaking display, and I find this kind of useful, and I'm going to turn it on. And it's set to off in the factory. My peaking level, I'm going to make mid, and my peaking color, I'm going to make it yellow. If you ever get a chance to use this, it's really helpful to see where you're in focus at, critical focus in your image. Whoops, okay. I hit the menu button to go back, and now we're back to the main menu. So one other option I like to change is my shutter type, and I shoot with the mechanical shutter. In my landscape photography, that's what I do. So I hit the menu button, go into the shooting menu to find that, which is the red box with the camera picture, hit the right selector button, and number 6 shows you shutter silent. If you hit the right selector button again, you go to silent mode, shutter type, and you change that to mechanical. And I always shoot mechanical in my landscape photography, and that's all you really got to do to change right here. I also changed my image stabilization for my landscape photography. 99.9% of the time I am mounted on a tripod when I'm shooting landscape photography. I don't hand hold my landscape photography, my camera often at all, probably 0.1% like I said. So if you go back into the shooting menu with the little camera and you go down to number 7, image stabilization, and you go to steady shot, I have that turned to off, okay? And that's everything from my landscape photography, I had the steady shot turned off. If you want, you can always turn it on real quickly by going into the FN menu, and it's right here, it's set up for right there, and you can turn it on right there very quickly. If you haven't explored the FN menu, there's a little button on the back of your camera, and you can customize this to what you want. I haven't done that yet. It pretty much has everything I need for the time being. The only thing I might add here would be bracketing. I do some bracketing shots sometimes. So as I get into this, I might add that to the back of this. And another option that you might want to enable on your camera, which is not enabled from the factory, is the touch operation on the back screen, on the display on the back. It's not enabled from the factory. You need to enable that yourself. So in order to do that, you would go into your main menu, and we'll get over here. Once you get into the main menu, you go all the way to the bottom, and some people call this the little suitcase. That's not the proper term for it. Anyways, you go to the right and you go down to number 5, which is touch operation. You come over to touch operation and turn it on. Okay, I leave the touch panel only setting, and that's all I really change here. Now once you do that, you'll be able to use the touch screen on the back to focus and move your focus point around and change all the other options. I can't show you that hooked up through the computer recording this screen. It won't let me do that. You'll just have to try that on your own. I hit the menu button to go back. So one last thing that I want to show you is when this camera comes from the factory, the electronic viewfinder and the back screen are kind of dim. They're set for 0. Your options are all the way down to -2 and all the way up to +2. I find that it's a little bit too dark for me, and I wanted to brighten them up. So I'm going to show you how I do that right now. You hit the menu button, and again you go down to the setup, the little suitcase they call it. And you go down to Finder and Monitor, which is number 7, and you go over here to Monitor Brightness, and I've got my monitor brightness set to +2, and you can change that yourself, okay? You can go back to what it was. It doesn't show here on the screen. And then my viewfinder brightness, well, because I'm plugged in, is currently disabled, but you would change that the same way there also. There's some other options here. I don't fool with those, okay? I just kind of leave those at the defaults. And that's basically all the things that I changed in my camera. Now the one last thing you need to do after you change all them settings that I just talked to you about in this video, you need to save those into a memory location. And I'm going to save mine into memory location number 1. And I'm going to show you how you do that right now. You go into the menu button and you go to the shooting menu right there with the little red camera. You go over to shooting mode, go figure, I don't know why it's called that. And then you go over to camera set memory, okay? And I've got number 1 selected, there's number 2, there's number 3, and these settings right here are for external memory locations. I think you could choose to save those on a SD card or whatever. We're only looking at 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so when you turn your dial to number 1 later, it'll bring up these settings. So I'm going to go ahead and press the center selector button on the dial. It's going to register those settings, and that's all there is to it. Now before you do that, make sure that you follow these directions carefully. And if you didn't, you'll have to do it all over again. Anyways, I hope you found this video useful and informative, and I appreciate you coming by tonight and let me show you how I set the camera up for my landscape photography. In the next video I do, we'll be doing how I set this camera up for my wildlife photography. So if you found this video useful and you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up and a like, please. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you'll get notifications, and click on the little bell notifications so you find out when I'm going to put out some new videos. I really appreciate everybody. And as always, if you got any comments or questions, you want to leave them in the comment section. I try to be very prompt about answering my comments, and I love hearing from each and every one of you. So thanks for coming tonight, and I really appreciate it. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye now.